Thank you. Okay. So, as it says, my name is Alfonso Nunez. Actually, everybody calls me Alfie. The only people who call me Alfonso nowadays, apart from Elliot, are my mum, the taxman. Are particularly popular in my house. So, as Elliot said, I head up business development and client solutions for Allegis Global Solutions in APAC. I guess really mine and my team's job is to advise clients on how to get the best out of the talent, and really they rely on us to make sure that talent comes into the organisation. And more what we're finding is, as Elliot said, that really clients aren't looking to us to be specific or explicit about one particular type of talent engagement. They're expecting us to expand way beyond where we've traditionally expanded before. Last year, I was up on stage a couple of miles away from here, and I talked about user experience and the importance of user experience to branded engagement. And this year I thought I'd flip it around a little bit and talk about the engagers themselves. What I mean by engagers is, God, I really hate the fact that my picture's up. I'm going to move on for this slide really quickly. What I mean by engagers is the people who set out to get work done. The traditional term of hiring manager isn't really appropriate anymore because hiring isn't necessarily the outcome, and hiring isn't necessarily actually what they even set out to do in the first place. It's more about engagement now. So, from a vision perspective, as Elliot said earlier, it's tough out there. It really is tough out there. Demand for talent still far outstrips supply, and the industry shifted for us as an outsource provider. We're having to find new ways to get work done. We're having to think about all the different types of worker engagement to get it done on behalf of our clients, and we're even looking at things like reinventing job descriptions and their function and reinventing them into being something more like work requests. As well as looking at, I guess, what is tantamount to a really totally new sense of division of labour for organisations as well. And that prompts us to have to look at these things with a much more creative combination of talent engagement models in order to get any large piece of work done. And that can be on a programme or project basis, as well as on a kind of annual business plan type basis. We're also then driving, I guess, or we're becoming one of the driving forces to try and break down some of those organisational barriers that have prevented organisations in the past from actually operating and thinking in this way. And this is back to, I think, what Neil's workshop was talking about earlier and the chat we were having around the table. And part of that, a critical component of that, is the consolidation of technology, or looking at ways to try and combine the ATS, the VMS, the e-procurement system, the HRIS, the FMS, all of those different platforms that contain the information and data around skill sets, availabilities, people, and the talent that's going to get your work done. A few numbers. We always have to have numbers in these things, don't we? Otherwise they don't count. You like the pun? I like that. So, 2018, global talent shortages reached a 12-year high. 45% of employers worldwide can't find the skills they need, and that actually rises to more than 65% for organisations that are hiring more than 500 people a year, apparently. Non-employee workers now comprise 40% of the total workforce. Now that's a massive 135% increase just in the last decade. Those sorts of trends, if you're in talent acquisition right now and you're looking at only one kind of aspect of talent acquisition, are horrendous to look at. They force you to be flexible, or you're really not going to succeed or survive. So with that in mind, we've been looking at the way that the entire talent acquisition sector has been redefined over the last decade to meet those changes in demand and those horrendous trends. The realities from an outsourced services provider perspective: process excellence, efficiency, scalability and cost saving, they're just table stakes now. They're not really enough to either differentiate us from any of our competitors and colleagues out there, but they're also really not enough to justify most organisations making those sorts of changes and actually going to outsource. Nowadays it's more about user experience and human-centric design thinking. It's about strategic advice aligned to business objectives. We're not really talking about hiring anymore. And it's also about technology and the integration of that technology, or at least the combination of that technology to allow it to be used in a much more flexible way than before. And providing blueprints and roadmaps for clients as to how they're going to get from where they are today to where they should be, let alone where they want to be. And the solution providers, we've been asked and expected to expand way beyond our traditional boundaries. As I said before, it's not just perm, it's not even just contract. We're now looking at all forms of labour and just getting work done. And the service providers, and this is back to I think Elliot's point just now, we're actually expected to also provide some degree of quantifiable return on investment for our clients and their investment in those talent acquisition programs. And that's not always necessarily, as I said, an easy thing or a straightforward thing to do. So, why is it so difficult? And I guess part of the reality that we have to deal with is there are disparate groups. There's different groups of talent. There's the traditional contract and contingent and permanent, and there's freelancers. That's a growing market. But then there's also the SOWs as an expanding factor in most organisations, and now it's coming into the remit more and more of HR and talent acquisition functions where traditionally they haven't been. And the crowdsourcing and kind of gig economy. The reality is, though, part of what's so difficult is the candidates themselves are awkward, the talent is awkward. One minute they're permanent employees, the next minute they're contractors, and the next minute they're gig workers with some side hustle that might actually have some degree of detrimental impact on your brand. It's really not that easy. And within the organisation, that change of ownership within the company, within the business, is also an evolving one. And we were talking about that over the last two workshops as well. And that creates a need for much more collaboration. I mean, we're now talking about not just resolving a turf war, we're talking about resolving the turf war and then actually making sure that those two strategies, whether it be an operational one, three strategies, operational one, HR one, and a procurement one, actually all align. I'm trying to whiz through this quite quickly to keep you animated after lunch, by the way. If anyone has any questions, please just shout out. Not that too long. So, what's trending right now? We canvassed, late last year, we canvassed about 1,000 organisations across their business leadership, their talent acquisition leadership, and their HR leadership groups. And these are the things that were highest up on the trend curves. And to be honest, I would say that, like Neil earlier on, those are actually borne out by the conversations I'm having with those same leaders here in the region as well. So these are certainly valid. I think what strikes me though, when these things came out, and also the initial conversations I had with those stakeholders is that these are a list of kind of their wants. Everybody wants these things, but no one's really talking about the challenges and how you address them. The things that I was just talking about in the previous slide around what prevents these and inhibits these things from happening aren't actually part of what's high on the agenda and high on their interest curve. So the reality is, I think that it's because the challenges really don't change. Everybody still wants roughly the same thing. And we're beginning to try and isolate those to at least fit the immediate needs. Everyone wants faster time to fill. I'm going through this like a clock, I think. So 1 o'clock, right? Everyone wants faster time to fill. And we're finding that the more you give managers access to those talent pools for a degree of self-determination and self-service, you actually massively improve that. We're finding with some of the programs where we're managing, give managers that direct access, a 50% reduction in time to fill, which obviously delights them, but there are dependencies on that. You know, they need curated talent pools, they need pre-screened candidates, and they need pre-organised contracts and arrangements with whoever the vendors are that are providing that talent in order for that to be allowed to happen in a kind of controlled way. Skills and knowledge retention, still a massive issue, and we're looking at, you know, the redeployment of whether it be contract staff or gig workers or workers within statements of work who would traditionally not have actually been identified or known. They would have just been some person doing something as part of a delivery mechanism. And for that, you know, you need to have up-to-date data, particularly if you're going to talk about the redeployment of your existing labour force as well. And you know, Elliot was mentioned just now about the fact that that redeployment challenge is still one that most organisations still struggle with and say isn't anywhere near good enough. For that, you need a single view of the data, and it's a challenging thing given the number of platforms that we've been talking about all day as hosting that data. Trying to integrate those platforms, trying to integrate those systems with that many stakeholders to align, let alone with that many systems providers to try and align, is going to cost you a lot of money, a lot of effort, and a lot of time. And most organisations just aren't really up for that, let alone the vendors themselves who aren't really up for that. So trying to get a solution to that problem is a really challenging one, because what you're talking about is trying to wend your way between your internal stakeholders who may have disparate interests and budgets to deal with, as well as the providers themselves who have their own self-interests at heart and all want to charge you money for integrating with any of the other suppliers. So that single view of data from our perspective is a critical one, particularly the layering over potentially of the ATS, the HRES and the VMS to deal with at least those four major categories, the three major categories of labour. And essentially everyone's wanting to have better decision support. You know, what's the data for? It's to enable you to make more informed decisions as an engagement manager. And also to change the kind of traditional behaviours away from, if you're an engagement manager, it used to be called a hiring manager, to change your way of thinking. Not just, oh, I need to replace that person. Not just, oh, I need a contractor for that. It's to take a step back and ask the question, I need this work done, how do I get it done? It's a different question to ask right from the start. And ultimately, you can't get away from it. There's also lower cost. And that can potentially be diametrically opposed to all those other needs that you were looking at before. So we need to provide alternatives to, or supplements to, the more expensive routes like an agency panel or whatever. But also, we need to start managing and anticipating demand in order to meet it more effectively. We need to consolidate the supply chain and supply base, and we need to focus on cost and bill rate management. Now, all of those things are actually traditionally very procurement orientated techniques and methodologies, but applied to permanent work is a bit tough. We've done it with supplier panels for quite a few years now. What about all the other techniques? And it's trying to apply those principles of procurement, but effectively to human-orientated talent in whatever way you're about to engage them, is what we're trying to achieve. Why does any of it matter? I guess the reality is, unless you do these things and you do them in that kind of logical, step-by-step way, it's going to be very difficult for you to actually identify, quantify, and ultimately monetize what your return on investment is from all these efforts. Not just the efforts, but the actual investment you're making in engaging with people, whether it be hiring them, paying them for their contract, paying the service provider for sustainable work. All of those things should, in theory, be providing you with a very clear return on investment. this is directly back to what Elliot was talking about in his introduction just now. Unless we start doing this, it's going to be very tough to get the attention and support of your CFO and even your CEO, COO in order to invest in these initiatives, these platforms, these methodologies. So what's the solution? Is there one? Well, there's always AGS. Sorry. Come on! Shameless plug for 30 seconds, why not? But in all seriousness though, what we're talking about really is starting the process with engaging the stakeholders. Get the C-suite's buy-in through a clear scope, a clear intent of what the ROI should be. What should the monetization of that ROI look like? Because once you have that as an objective, it's a lot easier to actually maneuver the project, the program of work, and the activities around identifying that. And then you have to go and get the data. And I'm sorry, it's never going to be an easy task to go and get all this data from all those disparate systems, from all those different stakeholders, and quite frankly, they come in totally different formats from different places. It's legwork, it's effort. You're going to have to put the legwork in. And because it comes in such different and disparate formats, you're going to have to cleanse it, clean it up, categorize it. In order to make it usable, you're going to have to put the legwork in, not only to collect it, but to make it make sense, help make it make sense at least. And once you have it, and you have it in the same format in a way that's analyzable, if that's a word, what should it tell you? I guess really the most important things to me are the risks. It should tell you how to quantify and monetize what the risks are. Because going into these sorts of conversations without being able to do that just means you have the spectre of risk hanging over you, and you don't want that when you're talking to the CFO. It should tell you what the savings should be, but more importantly, what the dependencies are to those savings, because that's how you defend the business case for your program of work. But also then the ROI itself, it allows you to monetize it, and also to identify what the true dependencies are going to be on achieving that ROI. Once you've done that, from a change management perspective, you always want to go back to the what's in it for them. What's in it for the engagers, for the talent themselves, and for the suppliers providing that talent. It's important to have that what's in it for them, because really that's what's going to help you achieve a prolonged and ongoing program of support for the program of work as well. The engagers want, the hiring managers remember, they want options, they want control, they want self-determination, and they want better results more quickly. The suppliers actually want lower cost of fulfillment. They want a lower burden of administration on actually being able to provide you with that talent in those different formats. And the talent itself, in whatever way you're engaging them, they want and expect better experience, more options. They want to be able to find their next job quicker, easier. If you can achieve that for all these groups, as well as provide your CFO, CEO, COO with a clear ROI and a way to get there, then you have support for your program of work. I must admit, I stole this slide. I don't think there's anybody here from the group from whom I stole the slide, but if you're out there, thank you and my apologies. But the reason why I wanted to use this was that traditionally, we're one of the world's biggest MSP providers for contingent labour, and we're one of the biggest customers of the major VMS providers as an organisation and on behalf of our clients. So when we deal with the VMS providers, one of the things we've traditionally done is looked at the talent supply through those VMSs as primarily coming through panels of agencies, as we were talking about contract workers. As we expand beyond contract workers into statements of work and gig workers and freelancers, etc., they don't necessarily come through the traditional agencies that we've traditionally used. And there are also other organisations, systems providers, the former advertising companies who have databases of skill sets and people and talent in those various formats. And the VMSs and those databases, those information providers, people information providers, are now beginning to work together to create what are tantamount to direct contingent labour sources. That's not direct in the older sense of us as an MSP group or a contractor RPO group going out and finding people for you as we traditionally would have done with a permanent solution. This is about those skills databases, those gig workers, the freelance type access to skills and getting work done that can be pumped straight into the VMSs now. That's a massive change for our industry because that's effectively self-sourced talent, but without necessarily using recruiters to do it. It does rely on pre-vetting a lot of the information providers, whether they be agencies or whether they be the monsters of the world, etc. You have to pre-vet not only potential providers, but also the talent that's going into those pools. And that can be largely automated as well if you have the right kinds of interfaces. But really what's most interesting for us from an Allegis Group perspective now is quantum work. And for us, I guess we looked at really over the last few years the fact that somebody came up with this stat. I'm not sure whether this stat is true, but I'm going to use it anyway, let's all pretend it's true. So I look at it and think it can't be true. 93% of executives are planning on a major redesign of their organisation over the next 2 or 3 years. Now that's the whole table. I was the same, right? I cannot say to you hand on heart that statistic is true, but hey, it's out there, right? Even if that's vaguely true, the drive, the prerequisite for flexibility and visibility on what the available talent and skill sets are out there, beyond permanent workers, beyond your existing workforce, beyond contractors available from agencies, that's just not enough to fill the demand for your organisation. So quantum work is a new platform, new product line we're launching, focused on using the power of data and AI to help you and your engagement managers make better, quicker decisions, more consistently, and to get to the end game faster. The end game being, how do I get this work done? This is how you can get this work done. So it's based on 3 pillars. The technology itself is a platform. There's the talent advisors that go along with that platform that help a hiring manager, I did it, didn't I? An engagement manager, that help an engagement manager to get their work done, and the data that goes along with that enables any of that to happen. But it also has cloud connectors, the supplier cloud, the traditional suppliers, the agency panels, etc., as well as the service cloud being some of those platforms that I was just showing just now in those clouds, in fact, in the previous slide, as well as some of the talent databases, who aren't actually agencies. They're not representing the candidate. They're just storing, sifting, analysing data on your behalf, and that's the service you're paying for. As well as then your own proprietary talent pools that you can be building. And by that I mean your HRIS or internal talent database, the ATS that you've been building over the years, as well as potentially the VMS that stores all of the old contractors that you've used over the years as well. Not old contractors, the contractors you used. If you pump all of that data into a single platform and apply a degree of machine learning supported AI, automating some of those processes, but more importantly, automating some of the decision support processes to serve you up the right kind of data to help you make the right kind of decision really quickly as an engagement manager. That's the piece that we're aiming for with quantum work. So how does it work? You have the engagement manager just logging in. So you've got the engagement manager up the top here, and then your kind of talent advisor group. Obviously, this is a shameless plug for ATS, so it's called the ATS Program Office, but it's just whoever the talent advisors are, right? So this is engage and needs-driven platform. This is all about the engagement manager driving the initial process through either a definition of the work request or actually searching for individual skills from a talent perspective. So they can kind of look for candidates still in a traditional way, or they can start it off with, I need to get this work done. The important thing is they can either do this solo, or they can do it with the help of the talent advisor from the program office. The clever bit is, because of all these clouds down here, because of the fact that we're layering over all of the traditional platforms that have traditionally stored your enterprise data down there, that data acquisition, the data consolidation, then the automated stacking, ranking and matching of all those different labor types allow the manager to get an almost immediate response on how do I get this work done. All I have to do is to find the work. And what I'm told is, these are your options. You can do it this way, and this is the availability of the talent, and this is the kind of cost. Or you can do it this way, and this is the availability of the talent, and this is the kind of cost. Now, if cost is one of my parameters, obviously I get a slightly different response served up to me. If time and availability, therefore, is part of my criteria, I get a very different stacking and ranking and matching served up to me there. Ultimately, if you then have an ongoing challenge of, well, there's actually not enough out there, or it's not there quickly enough, or what's out there is currently too expensive, because we still service with the program office and the talent advisors, then you can move into the more traditional, proactive sourcing, channeling, engaging, screening type methodologies. But you don't have to. You can avoid it if that talent is available. And that's the key thing. It's working out and being told, is it actually available? When is it available? How much will it cost you to get that work done? All of those options allow a manager to have some degree, and an organisation as a whole, some degree of control, which currently they don't really have. It allows you to have some degree of self-determination. I have choice. If I can squeeze a little bit more out of the budget, I can restack, re-rank those options for myself. And it's done with the AI matching, it's done almost immediately. It's only when you don't have options that fit your needs, that don't actually match any of your kind of criteria, that you then start your more traditional sourcing and recruiting processes. Whether you go through the traditional recruitment processes in addition or not, or whether it's just done through the matching, which obviously gives you an almost immediate return on your time investment, you then can go into your traditional screening and assessment type models and processes for the individual talent. So whether it's the contract workers, the permanent workers, the redeployees from inside your organisation, or even the gig workers and freelancers that are coming in as part of your SOW, you can still, with the integrated assessment and screening, actually get those people evaluated. I must admit, I'm not a technology expert, so I can't give you the ins and outs of how the technology actually works, but you are going to be hearing a lot more about it in the market over the next few months, because we're launching it as I speak. In fact, I'm probably going to get told off because it's not being launched for another couple of hours in the US that they wake up. But that for us, this is the transformational piece around how we're going to help organisations A, get work done more quickly, get work done in the most appropriate way, but also give them a quantifiable and visible return on the investments they're making in those talent engagement processes. I told you I was going to go through this quickly, didn't I? Trying to keep you slightly awake after lunch. Is there any questions? Because I guess I'm kind of done. I think the reality, I told you I was going to go through it quickly. My big thing was, we all talk about how difficult this is, and it isn't easy, and some of it is going to be legwork. It's going to take effort, it's going to take resources to actually get it done. There's no way to automate it because there's too many stakeholders, too many disparate data sets, too many disparate platforms and providers, etc. But if you, and none of this is rocket science, right? You align your stakeholders, you get hold of your data, you clean your data into a usable way, you clarify what's in it for me to those stakeholders, you work out your tech stack and you work out how to partner. So one of the beautiful things about the quantum work model is what we've been working on isn't just the technology, it's the partnerships that feed into that technology. But as long as you can use the platform and create your own partnerships, there's no end to the number of data feeds you can put into that. And partly what we wanted to achieve with it was the flexibility, because as I said right at the beginning, with the kind of change that's coming down the line, with the expectations of the business and the business executives, you can't go into it anymore with a single platform that's fixed. You can't go into it with a single set of providers of data feeds that's fixed. You have to be providing for what happens next, what happens tomorrow. Who's the new provider on the block that no one's ever heard of before? Or, I don't know, I can't even imagine what the next way of engaging talent might be. Maybe the bots are all going to have their own union and they're going to start asking for a pay raise, who knows. But all of those things that you can't anticipate today or tomorrow need to be built in as flexibility and openness to be able to partner with different providers, change those providers, evolve those providers, consolidate those providers. Thank you.
You almost got up.
Oh, okay. You got a question? All right. Come on in.
So, I've had the advantage of seeing Quantum about 6 months ago at your headquarters. And it's very powerful. And I think the idea for most people in the room, the ROI of using a system such as Quantum or some of the other products that may, combine to form some of its functionality is one thing. When we talk about the ROI on the system, what a lot of people look at is the cost, the fixed cost of the system and the operation of the system and how quickly you can fill jobs. One of the questions that I have, and now I'm going to make Steve Parker's life much harder by asking, and that's because you're going to go back and tell him, is does Quantum help you quantify? I'm curious if anybody else here does this. Okay, I used to be in that business, right, when I was with Nexa, and I used to tell customers all the time that the most expensive job is the unfilled one. Everyone focuses on the cost per hire. Was it $1,500? Was it $2,000? Was it $188,000 again? Okay, whatever that cost per hire may have been, they never think about what the cost was when it wasn't filled. So does Quantum have the ability, or does anybody here have a system that tells you that easily? So that you can go to the CFO or go to the hiring managers and say, every day that you don't respond to my resume costs this company, 60,000 Hong Kong dollars, whatever that number might be. So does Quantum help you do that? Quantify the unfilled job?
To be honest, I don't know that it does. When I think about the, years ago, I read a white paper from Saratoga Institute where they were talking about the cost of mishiring.
Yes.
About 8 times salary, fully loaded salary cost of the hire, which I never worked out really how did I work that out. But one of the things that it was talking about was including the cost of loss of productivity, loss of erosion of customer sentiment and preference, let alone the loss of sales or revenue or whatever it was directly, because that's easy to quantify. There was also the less direct, even less direct, cost of your internal erosion of sentiment as people have to make up the shortfall. Everyone has to work harder because the person hasn't been hired because of the empty chair. The cost of the empty chair, I think I can understand why they come up with it in paid types. It must be a massive cost once you drop all those in. How do you actually quantify and monetize them? It takes a lot cleverer amount than I did to try and work that one out. And I'm not entirely sure that the Quantum has the functionality and ability to do that. But what it can do is quantify at least how to get the problem addressed as quickly and effectively as possible, which, if nothing else, you can assure the CFO, COO, CEO will minimize the adverse impact of the empty chair.
But as part of the justification, if you just like the Saratoga did for the Senator did, if you don't hire this correctly by using the candidates that are in the system, this is what the impact could be.
Yeah, and I think part of that is, if you think about when you were talking earlier about the redeployment challenges and how they're never good enough, and then we combine that with the skills retention, knowledge retention challenges. If you can start to make sure that one of the key data inputs is your own employees' data, as well as the good contractors that you know, they're trusted, they deliver well. All of those things can be factored into that, well, what's the cost? Because ultimately what you're trying to do is get the best possible talent working on the work that you need as quickly as possible to get the work done, if getting the work done is quickly is an issue.
Awesome, thank you.
Anybody else got any really awkward questions? No? All right, thank you very much. Thank you.